invasives himself. I mean, he sort of is, but he's not going to do it. So it's it's self-preservation for us because we don't want them all back in our yard.
Well, it looks like, good evening, Margaret. Looks like now we have a quorum.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7:06 Oaks Road time. And welcome everybody on this wonderful rainy evening. And maybe let's go right to the agenda and can get a motion to approve the minutes for April 7th, 2025. We have a motion.
I move we accept the minutes.
Second, I was there.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Any communications or announcements? Okay, seeing none, we'll jump right into old business, and actually maybe it should have been new business, but it's a follow-up to our previous conversations about this, discussing where we go from here with what our efforts are. And we did have a chance to speak, and Margaret was there, speak with our first select woman just a couple of weeks ago, and discuss what she thought about where we move forward, and specifically whether we should be looking at how it made a strategic plan to fill in the gap of whatever is not ultimately contained in the plan of conservation and development update. And she did concur. She said actually that she's waiting. She says that's what we should be doing, is looking to wait to see what's left from the POCD and what maybe is not contained in it from what is there now. And then maybe then she would look to see the Our Town, Our Future committee to help kind of organize an effort moving forward to kind of take those items and can kind of develop an Ashford Town strategic planning document. So I think from my perspective, Nora, maybe you can shed some light in this. I guess from the last time we heard that the POCD was getting kind of closer to being in at least a draft form. And my question really would be from I guess a process or mechanics perspective. Would there be an opportunity, whatever is the ultimate POCD, to kind of have a document that kind of contains everything that isn't in it? I mean, is there some editing that they'll be doing to the current document, or are they just starting from new? I mean, I kind of see if we could kind of get what's left over in some kind of written form, then at least I think we have an opportunity to take that information and then have the framework of what a strategic plan should contain, and see what we kind of have to fill in the blanks and work towards as far as gathering further input. Not, I mean, we could get input on what isn't, what may be taken out of the POCD, but I think, there is some documents that I can forward to you, and I know Catherine Silversmith did have some information on how to proceed with a strategic plan, but I think it'd be instructive for us to have some, whatever the leftovers are.
Right. So the way it's organized this year is that the primary focus is on goals for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so of all the goals that were submitted by the different groups, any that pertain to PZC were pulled out and put in a separate goal section. So each of those 9 parts has 2 sets of goals, potentially. They don't all, for example, education doesn't have anything for the PZC to work on. But where there are 2 different sets, they are both going to be in there. But the PZC is not going to pay attention to the subject matter goals. It's only going to pay attention to the ones that are identified as PZC goals. So what you're talking about are all the ones that are not PZC goals, and they are clearly laid out. They're listed as, for example, natural resources goals, and and all the subcategories there that have nothing to do with PZC are all listed. And in terms of how far we are, I'm the person that's been making the changes on my computer real time, because nobody else, they just talk about what they want to do. And I'm like, well, we have to capture this, right? So
Yeah.
I've managed to get everything, all the parts of the 2015 converted into Word documents. And then I make changes to that. So the overall structure, except for this division of the two sets of goals, is very similar to 2015. I mean, Jeff sent out the 2015 section to each of the relevant committees, and they were just edited and sort of updated. That's what he asked for, updates. So it's very similar. So most of that has been done. We still have to get Mike to update figures and tables. And we are working on the introduction and making that more Ashford specific. Putting, people are going to, we're going to include goals or the wish list from the survey, the things that people wanted to see, that will be in there, plus other stuff that we're thinking of to sort of make it more cohesive. So it's not a list. It's going to be a paragraph, a couple paragraphs, I don't know how long, of what we're calling it aspirational goals for Ashford. The kind of thing is, yes, we are a rural community, we are an agricultural community, we want to keep it that way, etc. So it'll be all written out. But people keep talking about making changes. And I said last week, I'm not doing this after May 29th. I'm finished. We're not making any more, no more changes. We are polishing, we're done. And the thing about it is that the statute actually says that the PCC should review the plan every couple of years. So, if changes happen and things have to be adjusted, fine. I think the subject matter groups, the boards and commissions can also look and should, in my opinion, also look at what they've listed, which is a 10-year plan, and make adjustments every couple of years. So our POCD is saying that the Planning and Zoning Commission will review the plan every 2 years. Of course, other boards can do whatever's convenient for them, however it works out. But things are bound to change. We know that federal money is going to be probably impossible to obtain, and how's that going to affect what people want to do, etc. How are the rule changes for the EPA going to affect us, etc. So I think there'll be ways that we make changes. But that was a long answer to your question, and I'll just summarize by saying, yes, they're going to be easily accessed lists of things that should go in a strategic plan, that have to do with all those different categories that we have in the POCD.
So again, what is the projected timeline now, do you think? I know it's still a work in progress, sounds like, but they have a deadline to meet, but I mean, when do you think they might have something that's kind of like brought back the P&Z for their approval?
Right. I would say my personal goal, and this is what I'm going to be pushing because I'm doing all the typing, my personal goal is no later than the end of May. And that goes to the PCC. We already have, I think, four members on the POCD subcommittee that are on the PCC. I don't see any problem with it getting passed there. Then it has to go to our Board of Selectmen. I don't see any problem there either. Then it has to go to NECOG, I believe. And I don't know, I think 10 years ago, for some reason, that took a really long time. And I don't know what the issue was there. But we have Mike shepherding this thing. And so I think it'll get through whatever has to get through. And the goal is July 1. Oh, and I think there also has to be a public meeting.
Right. Public hearing.
I think that's probably after.
Before it goes
I
to
don't know where that falls in terms of being accepted by the Board of Selectmen. I don't know if it has to be before or after that, which is a good thing to think about because we have to schedule that meeting somewhere. But yeah, I would say there's no if there is a group that wants to get started on a strategic plan, I don't see any reason why the list of subject matter goals could not be handed over to such a group, whether the plan of conservation and development is completed or not. So I don't know how quickly you're thinking of getting this thing organized, but July 1st is less than 2 months away. So,
well, it sounds to me, I think one has to frame out, really what's the basic structure of what the town wants to contain in the strategic plan. It can have its certain categories, and I know that Catherine had some ideas on some methodologies and some examples to follow, and I think then it's a matter of planning that out. Okay, is there how do we want to approach that? Do we want to see if we can solicit a ad hoc group of the town members to sit on it, much like your POCD committee did, and whereby this group might facilitate that, and then it's a matter of then holding either input sessions with the public to gain, and the groups that have things to contribute, whether it's for other boards and commissions and or town agencies or whatever other organizations in town, and then it's a matter of holding the input sessions for that, and with the group. I guess Catherine was kind of looking at our group to kind of guide some of those, I guess, discussions. So to me, go ahead, Margaret.
It seems to me, and Nora, I have so much respect for you guys making this thing happen, because I totally get how much work and trying to parse through all of the details and glean what makes the most sense. And I feel like there was a lot of input, both public and committees and boards, to the POCD. And I know Catherine's interested in the community engagement piece of the strategic plan. I feel like we've sort of done a lot of that gave us the input to the POCD. And that maybe, starting at scratch again to say, okay, that was for the POCD. Now we're going to do something else called a strategic plan. Come back and tell us again. I think our townspeople will be really confused, like, well, what's this one and what's that one and how's it? So, I think we have some work to do to differentiate for people what, that one is that vision for the 10 years with a commitment to revisit it, all the boards and commissions and the planning and zoning right against their own work. But then, the strategic plan is how do we get there, right? Within all of these same groups. So I think there's going to be I think it's a little confusing in how we're going to use each of the plans differently within the community. But I feel like if the POCD is, as Nora describes, a lot of the work has been done and is incorporated in there, and the strategic plan just jumps off then to the next step with getting there. Mm-hmm. And that's a great asset to have, as opposed to just starting from zero.
Right.
Yeah,
so there is a lot of material, a huge number of goals that I think would just shift right over to a strategic plan.
To me, I I think what's important about a strategic plan is that, just as you're kind of following up with you're saying, Margaret, is that you're going to have these goals and objectives that now have a home, and they have kind of a schedule for implementation, and with people that are responsible or parties that have interest or stakeholders in those goals and objectives, so that you kind of have a roadmap on, you just don't have these things hanging out there in space. You basically have something that's been identified with a plan of action implementation, so you can begin to pick these things up. And a lot of the better strategic plans that I've seen or been involved with are the ones that give you, deadlines for certain tasks or elements of the goals to be accomplished, so that you have regular feedback, and you don't just put something on the shelf and then check it out 5-6 years later. How did everybody do? You've got some things in place that are really kind of monitoring what's going on in real time, so that you can show progress. Because I agree. I mean, people, the one thing I always hate is having meetings that nothing gets done, or meetings where people talk about the same thing over and over again. It's that my favorite movie, Groundhog Day. And it's so I think that's, to me, is what this group. I feel like I've struggled with this group for the last 5 years, in a sense, is that we just kind of feel like we're kind of drifting in space, or we're not getting our feet planted and getting things accomplished, in a sense. But to me, I think is the biggest goal, is with the strategic plan, is to put something in place that's going to have actionable items. It's going to have people that are identified as the primary people responsible, and or guiding those goals and objectives. So some successful and positive community contributing ends. That's my sense.
We've done that.
Yeah. So I think, and if there's, I think getting those things already done is great, because then, we could basically have a group that, kind of outlines a draft strategic plan. Then you look to see what needs to be filled in, and or that's what you bring to a group and say, okay, here's the things moving forward. Here's who we identified as the, people that are responsible, and or the timelines, and what do you think? That can be kind of the public input. And again, it's got to be clear, because it's been kind of confusing of what's going to shake out here, and I still don't, in my own mind, know where the divide is, so to speak, between those things that are PD centric and the things that can be left kind of out there, so to speak.
Well, one topic that is not in the POCD that came up several times in these two meetings and in the survey was the concept of a town center. And there is no single group, board, or commission that could make that happen. And so it's not in there because it's too diverse a topic. And I think that's the kind of thing that you could put in a strategic plan, because you're trying to draw in lots of different people to work on that sort of goal. But it came up at our community forum, it came up at the listening session, it came up on the survey. So, and it may be the same person every time, and only one, I don't think it's only one person. I think a lot of people would like that, but there's been no brainstorming on that particular subject that I'm aware of.
Well, just so you understand, Nora, there actually has been. I mean, and Margaret goes back further in time with this thing than I do, but I can tell you I got involved with this town, some 20 years ago on these committees, and it was being discussed then. We actually had the group, we had the last Green Valley do it with their planners and other people coming and do a visioning session.
Okay.
We had the landscape architect group from UConn develop a vision. We've actually, this group here, Our Town, Our Future, came out of a grant we applied for back in 2014 that brought in outside agencies and groups to create develop a community forum for looking at visioning for, basically the 44th 74 corridor. So, it's been out there, it's been kicked around in various versions, but I Margaret, you can speak to it, because I know that you probably were involved in some things. I know Ray Fenn had been in charge of the group with the last Green Valley, and that was probably that back in 2000. I mean 2005, maybe 2006.
Okay. Well, I guess I should say recently it hasn't been
Yeah, I know. Just,
hashed out.
Yeah. And I know a lot of work was
So,
done
go ahead.
too when they built the new town hall, right? When Knowlton Hall and when they, now that we have a town hall, and then imagining the senior center and across like that whole, I mean, there's a lot of work went into creating that to create a little bit of a town center, right? So that we actually, and I believe there's plans beyond what has been built. To build out more of a, of a, what I'll call a town center. I mean, that might not be what they called it. So it'd be interesting to kind of revisit some of that work. And I'm also a little bit like, I don't quite get what this suggestion is looking for, really. Like, is it a retail center? Is it just a building that everybody can hang out in? Like, I don't quite understand what folks are, when they say a town center, what they're seeking. I don't have a real firm understanding, but I'm not as close to the material as the POCD
Well,
group.
It might have been a separate library. This was a while back, but there's an old timer who lives behind Knowlton, a couple houses back, and he was telling us the whole story one time that his family owned the land where Cumberland Farms is and wanted to sell it to the town, and they missed the boat and it didn't work out, but that would have been the town center expansion. And well, that's gone. But there are people who kicked around a lot of ideas about that, but they also talked about over by Ashford Academy, the land there. Historically, that was kind of a center in the 1800s.
that was the center of Ashford when Eastford was still part of Ashford. And it really was in the center.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of real estate there. You've got the green, it's not level, but then I believe there was a church farther up Fitz from where the academy is. So except possibly for parking, I think that is a good spot. So Margaret, the only thing I've heard, and it wasn't any kind of in-depth discussion, was a place where people could meet and sit down and have a cup of coffee and chat that wasn't necessarily a retail space. I mean, frankly, it sounded like the senior center.
Right.
But
Dunkin'
I
Donuts.
think the senior center has a reputation of not being particularly friendly. So I don't know how that would work. Anyway, we don't have to talk about that now, but I was just giving that as an example of something that was not a goal of any of the boards or commissions. And
Got
there
it.
may be
Okay.
other kind of, I mean, I've got some ideas also that I won't go into now that I think would sort of be cohesive for the town. But when I go to a strategic plan meeting, I'll talk about that.
Okay, so I guess kind of summarize on this point, I guess we'll kind of wait and see what the final documents are for the POCD in next month or so. In the meantime, I will begin to forward some information to you on strategic planning and the process as examples.
Great.
I'd ask each of you to consider, what you think our town, our future's involvement should be, whether that's just taking what is left out of the POCD, kind of put it into some, preordained slots of a template for a strategic plan, and then maybe, providing some community involvement to kind of finalize that with, obviously the Board of Selectmen are the ones that are going to have to obviously run this component. Ultimately legislatively in the town. But I think that should be kind of, I think as best I can see, unless somebody has any other thoughts, kind of our homework assignments for the next couple of months anyhow, and then reconnecting with the Board of Selectmen. I will say that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Margaret, but I think I thought I heard Catherine say that she was going to kind of discuss some of this kind of with the Board of Selectmen as well, kind of she had talked with them a while back, but they really haven't discussed it as of late, but it's kind of getting back up on the radar screen a little bit, and she thought she'd re-engage the other two members more fully and kind of gauge their their interest in how we move forward too, right? Is that what you heard too,
Yeah.
Margaret?
Yeah, I think so. Because, understanding that there is a need for it if the POCD isn't going to be that plan that we need to, And we had also talked about, I mean, this really does align with the concept that Our Town, Our Future had talked about before, where, the topics, when we categorized the topics that kind of bubbled to the surface when we had our engagement sessions, and then doing more of a deep dive topically. So we could kind of pre-announce, okay, over the next 6 months, once a month, here's the schedule. We're going to get together and we're going to talk about natural resources. And then this session is going to be on, whatever, like the town center, like whatever these big buckets are. And that way people can pick and choose. They don't have to go to all 6, but if they really are passionate about the natural resources topic, then that could become that engagement that Catherine's looking for, and input from the public.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Any project updates anybody has? We've talked about one biggest one, so.
I've just been doing a few updates on the outdoors website. I added Crook's Orchard. They sent me their info a couple months ago, and I didn't rush to put it up because they aren't open anyway right now. But I updated that. So we've got something like 6 farm stands, or maybe it's like 4 farm stands, Crooks, and the farmers market. And I will be rotating those around a little bit so that they're not always in the same order. And I had to update one of the bike routes because it said you could stop at Cash's Country Store, which isn't around anymore. And then I'm going to be doing the walks all over again, because most of my pictures were done in the fall and winter. So plus we just need to keep it current. Plus I need to walk. So so we'll be doing that. And then I'll put new dates on each page as I do the walk there, and make any comments about the trail if there's work or what have you. And we will certainly be looking with more detail at what kinds of invasive plants are on these trails. I remember, I think it's Josias Biles has a ton of
Wonderful.
Okay, hope she's back. You're back.
Sorry.
Josiah Biles.
Josias Biles, I could tell because it was fall and the leaves had changed color, but it was just like everywhere you looked. And there are other ones everywhere you look, it's nothing but barberry. And the worst one is Iron Mine, which has got, I think, an acre of Japanese knotweed. It's horrible. But Joe, as the chair, or whatever you want to call him, of the Ashford Invasive Plant Working Group, met with the new trails director of Joshua's Trust, who was very interested in having local contacts, and he hasn't even hiked the trails yet.
Is it Alex? Do you mean Alex or the new executive director?
Not the new ED. He's a trail. I guess he's the guy that the trail stewards would report to, sort of, whatever the hierarchy. But he's real interested, and we'll see what happens, because honestly, those are wonderful places, but they are also the source of a lot of our infestations, especially that knotweed is terrifying to see how much is there. And, you know, it can't get any bigger. Otherwise, it's going to just trash the whole area. But so anyway, that's the update. There are some mentions of invasive plants already on my website, on the, you know, on the outdoors website. That's not the purpose of it, so I don't focus on it too heavily. But I do like to call people's attention to this so that they're aware of how important it is to prevent this from spreading.
So Nora,
I do want to follow. Okay, you want to go ahead, Margaret?
no, we need to reprint some more of the brochures. And do you have among your photos that you have, even if it is a fall photo, do you have a photo of like a family out hiking, or a couple like setting up on the trails, like something that we could, just to freshen up the brochure, maybe put a photo on the front?
Okay. I probably don't, but I think Margie Roy probably does.
That
She's got
she might have something.
gazillion photographs.
Okay.
So we'll find something for that. And I haven't worked on, Margaret, did you take brochures to Henrietta House?
I did not.
Because I still have, I don't know, 10 left or something. And it occurred to me that I hadn't taken any there. So I thought I would take those over because those are people from out of town and it'll give them something that they can do
Yep.
while they're there.
Great idea.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the perfect yeah, target, you know, the audience for, they're
Right.
looking for things to do there. So
Right.
well, I believe that we will have funding to be able to do another, you know, reprint of those this in this fiscal year. So we
And
meaning EDC.
that's before the end of June, you mean?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be great if we just wanted, like I said, to freshen up the cover. And you know, thank you for all the work on the website. I think it's really a cool thing. So I met this weekend the owners who took over the tavern in Westford Center across from Bottle Farm,
Yeah.
and they have also purchased the old
Church.
church. And I guess they have been before planning and zoning to lay out their plans, but they are turning that into an event facility.
Where are people going to park?
They have parking as part of the property of the church, apparently. So, you know,
They own
because I
that,
chatted with them about that.
they
Um,
own the empty lot that's on the fourth corner there, but you wouldn't be able to put very many cars there. Wow.
so in any event, it's exciting in that they're, I think, and we were on, this gentleman does this kind of design work for a living. They had a couple of houses that they showed on his website. The last name is Watts, so it's Chase Watts,
Okay.
and Stephanie is her name. And they have a couple of young children. They live in Utah and they have a house on the Cape. But it's really kind of exciting to think about people coming to that location for events, and you know, hopefully rescuing that building, because that's such a center point of that part of our
Yeah.
community. So
They have
but anyway, I shared the brochure with them because I said, you know, if you're going to have people coming for events, you know, this is something that Ashford, Our Town, Our Future did. And, you know, I sent them off with one of those. So that's, you know, those kinds of places is where we're going to want to put them, you know, when they ultimately get open.
good. That property is currently nonprofit. They're not paying taxes on it.
I did
Well,
want to follow up on one thing from our last meeting that I did reach out and make contact with Ashford's Director of Youth and Family Services. And she did, because of the timing of it, I did invite her to an EDC meeting. And that was a question that everybody had last time. Or you had mentioned, Nora, about there's some input you received from these that listening session about the need to kind of engage the youth in the community. And she's very engaging. She's been on the job for about a year, I think, maybe less than a year. And I talked about a lot of different things. about how, and really, I think one of the things, I think, Margaret, you could jump into, relative to what your thoughts were on it, but one of the things was that she's also on a group that looks for projects for youth, whether it's community service or some kids that might get in trouble that need to have to do something, and it was a matter of how that can be leveraged in the community to have the kids do something either through community service or whatever, or pay back, that engages them in a positive way in what's going on in the community, and then also that they learn a little bit more about the community. So maybe that as they grow older, they'll have a different appreciation other than this. There's nothing to do in Ashford, So I think that was the beginning of some thoughts and some engagement, and we're kind of looking and thinking about other ways maybe we can. I should have invited her to this meeting. It's been a busy couple of weeks for me. Forgot about it. But I think that's a positive thing too. Another agency that now is kind of cross-pollinating with some of the town agencies, other agencies, and she works directly too with part-time with the school as well. So, any thoughts you want to talk about on that, Margaret?
No, just she was totally engaging, and I think very committed, and she's got her hands full, right? And one of the things I think that concerns me, I mean, she does all kinds of human services, not just youth, but I'm very curious and concerned to see with the what the implication is of us cutting our full-time recreation director to a part-time position, and what kind of impact that's going to have on youth, especially youth and family activities within the community. Because you can't, if you're not there full-time, if you're part-time, you can only do part of the things that you did. And I'm concerned about that, just in terms of our momentum as a community, because people, they find that appealing, right? They want their kids to be active, and carol sings, and I guess the concert series is going forward, that's good, but that, it's kind of related to Olivia. What is that? Was that her name?
Irene.
Irene. Why am I having such a hard time with that? Okay.
What's her last name?
Rowley.
Rowley.
Rowley. Yeah, I mean, it's a contradiction of terms. The thing that people are maybe saying they want to see more of it is not an issue, but an item that they want more focus on. And then, it seems it's always sad that in the communities when they look at budgets, social services and those type of things that are the linchpin of our community are the things that get cut first, it seems. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's a challenge.
There are people on our community Facebook page today complaining that they are raising the taxes and it's unsustainable and blah blah blah. So we all have to make sure to vote for the budget tomorrow. There was one woman who said, "Where do we vote?" And a guy responded, "That building next to town hall." So these are people that have lived here for decades and still don't know the names of the buildings, and clearly don't know where you vote because she had to ask. I thought,
I know.
She's only going to go to vote against the budget, and she won't vote for anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks to a bigger issue, though, that we as, the groups, we all have to kind of help educate people as to what really is involved. And sometimes, it's people only get engaged when they're against something, so I think our goal should be to try to engage people so that they, at least if they're coming out there, they've got all the facts they need. And, so I think, yeah, it's a community that people are struggling, and that's a real thing, and nobody wants their taxes to go up. So we have to find how we can balance those needs and minimize the impacts to people, and that's economic development's challenge, and that's why we're trying to work with P&Z to work towards some reasonable regulations so that we can help get some tax base in here to help ease the pain and maybe make some of these hard decisions that are being made by good citizens and volunteers on these boards and commissions, so that we can maybe move the community forward and keep up with what's going on in the rest of the world. in a positive way.
I will say that if there's a strategic plan, the number one issue must be getting the Cadle Rock property available for development. To, you know,
That's been one of the top priorities for EDC for the last 10 years. I mean, that being stalled as long as it did, we got to get that, we've got to get that producing services and revenue for us.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of wonderful things we could have in this community, whether it's walking trails and things, but you have to, somebody's got to pay for it.
Well, what about the problem with the wetlands that I've heard preclude a septic system there, which makes it difficult to have like a little cafe or
Yeah, I
whatever.
don't think that we know that absolutely yet. And I think that that's the grant that the Board of Selectmen have put in for, is to actually get that, and doing with the town of Wellington, to actually get it mapped and so that we really know what are the areas where things can and can't happen. So
Right.
I think it's kind of speculation at this point, and we really need someone to go in and give us the facts on that.
Absolutely. I hear things and I don't know if they're proven or not all the time.
Yep.
I mean, it could
Yep.
just be
Nothing,
fantasy.
nothing's proven.
Yeah, that's
Is there
it.
any other project updates anybody has?
No.
I probably should have mentioned this during correspondence at the top, but the other thing that Catherine shared with us that's pertinent to some work we did here was, so Mike had done the investigation with the Eastern Community Development, sort of that grant group. Remember that? Is that something like that, right? That's their name, Eastern.
No, Citizen CIRT, whatever. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you know, was there a way that we could set up some sort of a fund that people could contribute to that could then be leveraged to be able to help pay for some, you know, some important projects not related to taxpayer money, right? So Mike had explored that, and but it also came up, Nora, you'll remember, at the POCD community session about this notion of, is there a way for people to be able to donate? I guess specifically we were talking about the open space fund, and how can we build up the fund that right now, what did Loretta say, has like $1,800 in it or something? Like, we're not going to buy anything with $1,800.
Right.
And, you know, and how can we be building that fund up? But Catherine investigated this, and we'll probably be doing a story in the June Ashford Citizen about how people can do that, how you can bequeath, you know, you can put in your will, you can make a anonymous donation once a year, you know, like whatever, but that there is a way, and there's a line that we can put that in, so it goes into the, you know, 4 special projects within the town. So so that was good news, because I feel like, you know, we need to look at lots of different ways to build up the funds that, you know, again, we want to remain rural, but if we can't step up and help purchase open space when it comes available, or development rights or whatever, we're not going to get very far. So
Right. That has to be a recognized nonprofit, like a 501c3 type of organization, in order for people to donate money from a donor fund, a DAF. I can't remember the full name of it, but you can put some of your 401k money into a DAF, and then they distribute it. But it has to have a tax number, the right kind of tax number. So the Youth and Social Services in the past, was when it was Melissa, she said, yeah, it's a charity, but it wasn't a certified charity that allowed people to have money donated from these particular kinds of funds. So we have to make sure that it does meet that requirement, because then people can count that as a tax deduction. Otherwise, it's just money that you're giving to a
Yeah,
friend.
and that may not be doable through the town. I mean, that would have to be through something like this, the Community Foundation or someplace like
Mhm.
that.
Right.
But
Talked
anyway, she
about
was
this.
pursuing it to find
Right.
out legally how to make that work.
Good
I
idea.
think it's a
Thank
few
you for that.
$1,000s, and we were actually talking about that years ago for the Cemetery Association, Westford Hills Cemetery. And we had to rule it out because of the cost. But people still have donated.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you very much for your input, comments. New members, been trying to recruit people. Even tried to recruit the young lady there from Youth and Family Services. So to keep an open mind. So if anybody here, if anybody else would like to be involved, obviously in our group or any other group in town, then there certainly are enough openings on boards and commissions and committees. So
Forwarded the invitation to this meeting to John Boyano.
yeah.
Because he has expressed some interest in joining this, and I think John's right. He's an idea guy, and I think his energy would be a great asset. So I'm going to keep working on him to think about joining us with this work.
And he had a pottery class that he had on Monday nights. That was last year.
Oh, is that that was the glitch? Got it.
Right.
And is Richard, have you talked to Dick, Mike?
It's been a while, probably like a couple months. I know I'll try to reach out to him. I tried calling him a couple times, but he didn't pick up. So
Yeah. Just wonder how he's doing.
yeah.
The same thing, if he was still on our board.
Yeah. He hasn't stepped down, but because he does get the agendas. I know that. So, okay. And we talked, I guess, new business. We kind of did talk about the next steps already. Kind of jumped ahead on that a little bit. POC, we talked about that. Doesn't look like anybody from the public is here. Any other input from anybody for our next agenda? I think the kind of the homework assignment stuff will get stuff to everybody and kind of think about a framework and again what level of commitment this group wants to put forth on what could be. But I think there's still a lot of unknowns. So,
Mike, do you know if of any particular towns, especially small towns like us, that have strategic plans that we could look at?
there are a few, yeah, and I will forward to you some examples, both of various towns. I think I would that I've seen is picking out kind of the methodology they use and some of the categories how they package. POC packages things, in governance and economic development, education, those type of things. So I think you can package your strategic plan more tailored to our community. And I think that'll be what's kind of key to us, making it simple yet understandable. So
Right.
So I will, between now and the next meeting, I will forward some of that information for everybody to take a look at.
That'd be great. Thanks.
And then any other general comments anybody has?
Yeah, yes. I think maybe I think I've mentioned this before other times about the communication compared to other towns. If we have an emergency, there are many different types of emergencies, and what people should do when there's a crisis in the town. And I felt like we slipped through the cracks in a number of situations. Once when we had a killer loose in the woods right behind my house, and Willington, told residents about it on that side, because there's the Langhammer and Fenton Ruby, and there's one is Ashford, one's Willington, but they're right next to each other. And so this person was out there. It was a manhunt for days and days, but he was in our area for a long time, and we weren't told. Okay, that's just one instance. And then there's been a lot of long-term power outages in the past where we didn't know the situation always to get where to get water if your well's not working. And Willington had a plan for people to take showers in a school, and they had everything like organized, and they had, because I'm on emails for all the local towns, I get the notifications. So like, that's for those residents of those towns, but I still like to see how town government runs in, all the nearby towns. But the communication aspect, you can get on this and it's not spam. You can choose, you go to the town and you click on, I would like to get updates only about recreation department, or I would like this, the emergency, with, so like I'd be told right away, I don't have to go, look at this, look on Facebook, or wait till the citizen comes out. But if you needed something, to find out something right away as it's happening, and how this affects our people as opposed to the next town, how we get the water, when will the town hall be unlocked, where maybe there is water being distributed, how do we even know that? So that's
Well,
just.
we do have, good.
We have an emergency management director in every town. I think that they're associated with the fire department typically, but he isn't just responsible for fire emergencies, but if there is a greater emergency around the state. And so I think it's a good point, Gwen, and I think that we need to get like as many people to be signing up for the notifications from the town, including the code red emergency, where they could publish, in the case of the killer in the woods, that's a great example, like that, they could have activated that. But the whole, like what we should be doing when there is an emergency should be accessible information all through the year, right? Like that should be a campaign that should be in the Citizen every month, about, in the case of an emergency, this is where you'll be able to get showers, and here's where you can get what, like that should be communicated all the time. So, that's something that we could bring to the attention of the selectmen, and and it used to be Tom Borgman. He used to be our emergency management director, and I don't know who is in
somebody
that
named
role now.
Mike, somebody, Garrett, maybe something like that.
Mike Garrett, that could be. So, but that's where that kind of falls, I think. And I think you're right. Like somehow, how can we encourage them to be more communicative, or how can we help them be more communicative about that information?
Do we have a place for a shower if our generator doesn't work, or if someone doesn't have a generator and we have 7 to 10 days of outage? I don't know if our town even has that, like Willington and Mansfield.
We do have, I mean, there is an alert system through civic engagement. They have it, they could sign up for on the website. And I think some of the things you may be talking about, obviously, that I know they were without an emergency manager for a little bit. So I think, as far as somebody managing it, here's a perfect example. I'm going to speak from my municipal experience, and what's going on right now in the budget is that when you start having cuts of things, and you have, Ashford, from my perspective, has a staffing level that's kind of bare bones, and it's getting barer. So all these things that people like to have take somebody to be actually manage that information, when they're receiving it, and not only managing the incident, but then putting that out in certain forms. So it takes time and effort, and I think that could be something that's, I'm not trying to make excuses here, but whether it's electricity, when Eversource, having worked with them, they're getting better, but I mean, sometimes you don't have the information until you contact them directly. So I think what it boils down to is that there is a system on place. It's been in the Citizen a number of times. People can sign up for it for alerts. And there's also one through the state emergency management that does come into alerts with all these different alerts that you can get for a child missing, a person missing, the Amber Alerts, and all those things. Those are things you can opt out or opt in on. So there are things there. I think if you Google them, or you can go to the town's webpage, you'll see that there are some things that you can sign up for, even to the point of alerts for some. They just, with the new webpage, they have alerts for, you can sign up for, like even agendas and things like that. So
have any rights to E.O. Smith because we pay our taxes to the high school for an emergency shelter building. Are we allowed to use any of the facility in an emergency?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
so
don't know.
that's what these statewide emergency management teams,
Right.
every town isn't left up to figuring out in case of a regional emergency, like, it's not like a lifeboat, takes off and we sink. I mean, I think they think about it regionally, so that there are schools that become an emergency shelter, like the middle school in Mansfield, but that doesn't mean you have to live in Mansfield to, take advantage of it, I think. So those are the things that you're saying you wish someone would kind of inform us as to what is that plan? What is our big emergency management plan? And this whole thing of every family should have their own emergency plan, like where you have a kit that you could grab and go,
Okay.
the go kit thing, and you should have all of your important numbers written down, and and in a couple of places, and like the state does a lot with this emergency management, emergency preparedness. So we could even kind of dial into that, or someone, and whether it's our town, our future, but the community could dial into that and do a little mini campaign of, are you prepared if there's an emergency?
Do you know where to go, what to do if this or this happens?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of information out there.
I'm just looking at the POCD. Ashford is participating in a cooperative sheltering agreement with Mansfield, Coventry, and Willington to provide limited overnight sheltering and food when the American Red Cross's regional shelter is not activated. Ashford may open warming, cooling, and charging centers primarily at the town office building and the senior center. For lengthier emergencies, the Ashford School has limited facilities for shelter, showers, and food. So it's addressed in here, but what I agree with what you're saying, Gwen, it's not advertised. So
Thank you. I didn't even know that. Just didn't know that.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing it up, and we'll reconvene next month with some information in hand, and hopefully have some news from the POCD.
Yes, like we're finished.
like Nora's done typing.
I mean,
So,
my point in saying I wasn't doing it after May 29 was we have to stop. It's got to get complete.
It'll never end.
And it will
Yep.
be.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn then? On this
I'm
fine.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, and thank you everybody for attending, and appreciate it, and hopefully we see the sun by the end of the week here.
Oh, that'd be nice. All right. Good night.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.